Hello, my name is PMkhize. Today I'll be presenting correlation test analysis. We will start our presentation by defining key concepts. We will set the correlation analysis context. We will then conduct a 10 correlation test based on variables provided. We will conclude by highlighting important key takeaways and I will open up for questions. Correlation. Correlation is a single number that describes the degree of relationship between two variables. Correlation coefficient. That is a measure of linear correlation or dependence between two variables, giving a value between +1 and -1 inclusive, where 1 is total positive correlation, 0 is there is no correlation, and -1 means there is negative correlation. If the hypothesis that concludes that the correlation coefficient is significantly different from 0, we say that the correlation coefficient is significant. If the hypothesis test concludes that the correlation coefficient is not significantly different from 0, we say that the correlation coefficient is not significant. To set the context for our correlation test, the dataset was generated using a SurveyMonkey asking participants who are located in Midwest United States questions regarding their income, debt, savings, and other important personal finance factors. The dataset is a distillation of the full survey data that contains the following variables. Income, which is a self-reported income of the participant in US dollars. Debt is a self-reported debt of the participant in US dollars. Savings is the self-reported savings of the participant in US dollars. Stocks, it's also a self-reported portfolio valuations of the participants in US dollars. Wallet, it's a self-reported amount of cash in individuals that the individual carries in their wallet. For this presentation, we will focus on correlation analysis of the following variables: income, debt, savings, stocks, and wallet. The first test looked at whether there was any correlation between income and debt. The following correlation test was conducted, where a null hypothesis stated there is no correlation between income and debt for Midwest US participants. The alternative hypothesis states there is a correlation between income and debt for Midwest US participants. The correlation coefficient and its p-value were calculated using PSPP, and assuming that the alpha was 0.05, no significant relation emerged. Therefore, the test failed to reject the null hypothesis and concluded that there was no correlation between income and debt for Midwest US participants. The second test was on income and savings, and based on the test conducted, the correlation test found that there was significant correlation that emerged. Therefore, the test rejected the null hypothesis and concluded that there was correlation between income and savings for Midwest US participants. The third correlation test looked at income and stocks, and the results found that there was significant correlation that emerged, and therefore the test rejected the null hypothesis and concluded that there was correlation between income and stocks. The fourth one was on income and wallet, and it found that there was a significant correlation that emerged, and the test rejected the null hypothesis that there is correlation between income and wallet for Midwest US participants. The fifth one found that there was no significant correlation that emerged, and therefore the test failed to reject the null hypothesis and concluded that there was no correlation between debt and savings. The sixth one was found that there was no significant correlation that emerged, and the test failed to reject the null hypothesis and concluded that there was no correlation between debt and stock for Midwest US participants. The seventh one was on debt and wallet, and it found that there was no significant correlation that emerged, and therefore the test failed to reject the null hypothesis and concluded that there was no correlation between debt and wallet for Midwest participants. The eighth test was on savings and stock, and the test found that there is no significant correlation that emerged. The test rejected the null hypothesis and concluded that there was correlation between savings and wallet for Midwest participants. The ninth test was on savings and wallet, and it concluded that there is significant relation that emerged, and therefore the test rejected the null hypothesis and concluded that there was correlation between savings and wallet for Midwest participants. The 10th and last hypothesis looked at stocks and wallets, where the conducted test found that there is significant correlation that emerged. The test rejected the null hypothesis and concluded that there was correlation between stocks and wallets for Midwest participants. Takeaway notes is to understand the key concepts of correlation and how Pearson's correlation coefficient is measured. And if the hypothesis test concludes that there is correlation coefficient significantly different from 0, we say that there is significant, the correlation is significant. And if the hypothesis test concludes that there is correlation coefficient is not significantly different from 0, we say that it is not significant. Thank you for watching. I will now open up for questions. Thank you.